Switzerland, October 1992. The mountains outside the window are the same mountains they have always been. White, permanent, indifferent to the particular dramas of human lives conducted in their shadow. Inside the doctor's consulting room in Lausanne, the light is institutional and flat, and the silence that follows the word cancer has a specific texture that anyone who has sat in a room and heard it will recognize for the rest of their lives. The woman sitting across from the doctor is 63 years old. She is thin, thinner than she has ever been. And Audrey Hepburn has been thin her entire life. The thinness now is different. It is the thinness of a body that has been feeding something other than the person who inhabits it. She has just returned from Somalia, her last UNICEF mission. She did not know it was her last when she went. She knew only that the children needed her, and that the pain she had been ignoring for months could wait until she came home. She is home now. The pain did not wait. She sits very still in the doctor's chair and listens to what she is being told with the quality of attention she has brought to everything important in her life. Total, focused, without flinching. When the doctor finishes, she asks 3 questions. The first is about continuing her UNICEF work. The second is about the surgery timeline. The third is about going home. This is episode 6, the diagnosis, the final Christmas, and the angel who went home. The pain had been present since summer. She had filed it with the discipline of long practice under the category of things that would be addressed when the work allowed. The work had not allowed. It never allowed. There was always another country, another camp, another convoy of dying children that her presence could help, that her face could draw the cameras toward, that her name could attach to the fundraising appeals that translated into the food and medicine and vaccines that kept specific children alive. The pain was manageable. The children were not manageable without her. So she had gone to Sudan, and then to Bangladesh, and then in September 1992, back to Somalia. The worst place, the most important place, the place that required the most from her and to which she gave everything she had remaining. She came home from Somalia in a way that was different from all the previous homecomings. Robert Wolders, who had watched her collapse after 50 missions and had learned the difference between the collapse of a person who has given everything and the collapse of a person who is genuinely unwell, understood immediately that this was different. He said nothing that evening or the next. He made her tea. He sat with her. He watched her eat almost nothing and sleep with a restlessness that suggested pain being managed rather than resolved. On the 3rd day, he told her she needed to see a doctor. She agreed, which was itself a signal. In the years of the UNICEF missions, he had suggested this perhaps a dozen times, and she had deferred every suggestion with the practiced gentleness of someone who has no intention of following the advice but does not wish to cause an argument. This time, she said yes with a quietness that he found more alarming than any argument would have been. The initial appointment leads to tests, blood work, imaging, an endoscopy, a biopsy, the incremental accumulation of medical information that modern medicine requires before it will commit to a conclusion. Audrey waits through this process with the same quality of stillness she brings to everything. She does not catastrophize. She does not dramatize. She tends her garden when she has the energy for it and sits at the window looking at the mountains when she does not. And she allows herself the private knowledge that the news, when it comes, is unlikely to be good. The news comes in October 1992, appendiceal cancer, a rare malignancy originating in the appendix and, by the time it announces itself with symptoms, typically already advanced. Hers has spread to the colon, to the lymph nodes, to the abdominal wall. The staging is late. The surgeon who reviews the imaging with her is careful with his language, as surgeons are trained to be, but the careful language does not disguise what the images show. Surgery is recommended immediately. Chemotherapy would follow. The prognosis with aggressive treatment is measured in months to a few years. Without aggressive treatment, it is measured in months alone. Audrey asks her 3 questions. The first, can she continue her UNICEF work? The surgeon tells her not during treatment and possibly not afterward. She nods. The second, how long without treatment? He tells her months perhaps. She nods again. The third, when can she go home? She agrees to the surgery. She declines the chemotherapy. This decision, which will be discussed and debated after her death by people who did not sit in that consulting room, is not made from despair or resignation. It is made from the same clear-eyed pragmatism that has guided every important decision of her life. She is 63 years old. She has lived, by any measure, a life of extraordinary fullness. She has been an icon and a mother and a humanitarian and a war survivor and a woman who found, in the end, exactly what she was for. Chemotherapy at the stage her cancer has reached offers the probability of months of severe illness in exchange for the possibility of a few additional months of compromised life. She chooses quality. She's always chosen quality. Telling Robert is the hardest. He has been present for everything. The missions, the collapses, the nightmares, the moments of genuine peace in the Swiss garden. He knows before she speaks that what she is about to tell him will change the remaining portion of his life. He listens. He asks her to reconsider the chemotherapy. She explains her reasoning. He is quiet for a long time. Then he tells her that he will support whatever she decides and that he will not leave her side. He keeps this promise absolutely. Her sons are harder still. Sean is 32, old enough to hear devastating news with adult composure, young enough that composure does not come easily when the devastating news is about his mother. Luca is 22, and he does not attempt composure. He breaks down completely, and Audrey holds him with the arms of a woman who has been holding people through unbearable things for 4 years and has not exhausted her capacity for it. She tells her sons what she believes, which is that she has lived a full life, that she is at peace with what it has contained, and that the time remaining to her is sufficient for everything she still needs to say and do. She writes UNICEF a letter. The organization's response, relayed through their Geneva office, is devastated and graceful. They tell her that her work has saved millions of children, that her legacy within the organization is permanent and irreplaceable, that she should rest and be with her family. She reads the letter and smiles and folds it carefully. She schedules the surgery for November 1st. The hospital in Lausanne is private and quiet, and the room where Audrey waits on the morning of November 1st has a window that faces east toward where the light is just beginning to define the edges of the mountains. She has written letters. This is not melodrama. It is the practical consideration of a woman who has spent 4 years in active conflict zones and has long since made peace with the possibility that any given departure might be the last one. The letters are addressed to Sean, to Luca, to Robert, to Hubert de Givenchy, her designer and her friend of 40 years. Each one says what needs to be said. Each one is sealed and placed where the relevant person will find it if the surgery does not go as planned. The surgery takes 5 hours. The surgical team removes the appendix and a section of the colon. They work with the precision and speed that the situation demands, following the cancer's visible spread through tissue that should be healthy, removing what can be removed and documenting what cannot. The imaging had shown an advanced malignancy. What the surgery reveals is more advanced than the imaging suggested. The cancer has threaded itself through the abdominal cavity with the thoroughness of something that has had months of uninterrupted growth. They remove what they can. They close. They speak to the family. Robert Wolders, Sean, and Luca have been in the waiting area for 5 hours. The surgeon who comes to find them has the expression of someone who has delivered this specific type of news before and has not found a version of delivering it that makes it easier to receive. He explains what they found, what they removed, what they could not remove. He gives them the timeline that the findings suggest: 3 to 6 months without chemotherapy, perhaps a year with it, perhaps. Robert tells Audrey when she wakes. She is still groggy from the anesthesia, surfacing slowly through the layers of sedation into the reality of a hospital room and his face beside her, and the particular quality of pain that follows 5 hours of abdominal surgery. He holds her hand. He tells her gently and completely. She listens. She is not surprised. The certainty she had been carrying since the initial diagnosis has simply been confirmed. She asks how long. He tells her. She nods slowly. She says she wants to go home. The recovery takes 2 weeks. Givenchy comes. He has been her designer and collaborator and genuine friend since the Sabrina Atelier meeting in 1953, when she walked in as a relatively unknown actress and described what she needed, and he listened. 40 years. He brings flowers, extravagant, beautiful, the kind of flowers that are their own form of language when other language is inadequate. He sits with her for an afternoon. They do not talk about the cancer or the prognosis or the things that need to be said before there is no more time to say them. They talk about the things that friends of 40 years talk about when they are together. Memories, shared history, the specific texture of a friendship that has outlasted marriages and careers and the entire apparatus of the public life they both inhabited. When he leaves, they both understand that this visit is a particular kind of goodbye, and neither of them says so. UNICEF representatives come. They tell her, with the earnest specificity of people who work with statistics and understand what statistics mean in human terms, that her 5 years of missions are estimated to have saved millions of children's lives. The figure is not metaphorical. It is the product of the donations her presence generated, the awareness her missions created, the policy changes her visibility enabled, each of these translated through the work of UNICEF's programs into food and vaccines and clean water and survival for specific children in specific countries who would otherwise have died. She smiles and says she wishes she could have done more. In mid-November, the news breaks publicly. The world discovers that Audrey Hepburn has cancer, that she has had surgery, that the prognosis is serious. The response is enormous and immediate. The tributes, the expressions of love and gratitude, the candles and flowers left at the entrances of theaters and fashion houses that have, in some sense, been part of her public life. She reads some of the coverage. She asks for privacy. The coverage does not stop, but it becomes more respectful. A collective decision by the media that has followed her for 40 years, that this woman, who has never once done anything to deserve the intrusion, deserves to be left alone to go home and die as she has asked to die, quietly, with her family, in the village where she found her peace. Home is la Paisible, the peaceful one. Hubert de Givenchy arranges a private medical transport for the journey from Lausanne. Not because the distance is unmanageable, but because Audrey's condition makes even short journeys a matter of careful planning now. And because it is the kind of practical expression of love that a man of his particular formation knows how to offer. She arrives home in late November, helped inside by Robert, and the house receives her with a particular quality of domestic spaces that have been genuinely inhabited and genuinely loved. The accumulated presence of years of ordinary mornings and garden seasons and family meals and Swiss evenings. A hospital bed has been installed in the living room. This is her specific request. She wants to be where the house lives, where the windows face the garden and the mountains beyond it. December is settling over the valley, and the garden is dormant, the beds bare, the apple trees skeletal against the gray sky. She looks at it from her bed and finds it beautiful. The physical decline moves at its own pace. She cannot eat solid food without pain that the available medication manages imperfectly. She is losing weight with a rapidity that mirrors, in its terrible symmetry, the weight loss she witnessed in the children of Somalia and Sudan and Ethiopia. The body consuming itself, the visible evidence of a metabolism that is no longer sustaining the person it belongs to. She is aware of this parallel and has, in her characteristic way, made peace with it rather than resisting it. Her mind remains completely clear. This is its own kind of gift and its own kind of burden. To understand everything that is happening, to be fully present in the final weeks of one's life, requires a quality of courage that is different from any other kind. She has it. She has always had it. December approaches. Audrey insists on Christmas. This is not negotiable. She tells Sean and Luca and Robert with the calm firmness of a woman who has spent 63 years being graceful about the things she cannot change and absolutely immovable about the things that matter to her. She wants her family together. She wants the house decorated. She wants a tree, small, appropriate to her current capacity to engage with it, but present. She wants Christmas dinner, even if she cannot eat it, because the smell and the noise and the particular warmth of a family gathered around food are things she wants to be, inside. One more time, they give her everything she asks for. Robert, Sean, Luca exist in the house together in the particular intimacy of a family that has been stripped of everything except what actually matters. There are no professional obligations, no public appearances, no management of image or schedule. There is only this: the woman in the hospital bed, in the living room, and the people who love her, and the days that remain. She tells stories in these weeks. She has the energy for them in the mornings when the medication is managing the pain most effectively, and she uses that energy to give her sons what she can still give: the material of her history, the texture of a life that preceded them, the specific details of experience that will survive her only if she passes them along now. She tells them about Arnhem, about the winter of 1944, the occupation, the hunger that became so complete that the body's usual relationship with itself was suspended, about the British soldiers arriving in the spring and what it had meant to stand on a liberated street and understand that the worst was over. She tells them about the ballet, about the way it had organized her ambitions in the years after the war, about the audition that had started everything. She tells them about Hollywood, the early auditions, Roman holiday, the morning she won the Oscar and sat in the theater unable to believe that this was real, that she was here, that the world was apparently going to let her do what she loved for as long as she wanted to do it. She tells them about Givenchy, about the black dress, about the Tiffany scene and the 11 takes and what it had felt like to stand on Fifth Avenue in the early morning and understand that something significant was being created in that silence. She tells them about UNICEF, about Ethiopia, the first camp, the first child she picked up, the first understanding that her fame was a tool that could be used for something real, about Somalia, the worst of it, the children too quiet, the feeding centers, the particular responsibility of bearing witness to things that the world needed to know about and would not know about if she did not go. She tells them that the UNICEF years were the best years of her life, and she means it with a completeness that requires no qualification. She tells them how to live, be kind, help people who need help. Do not waste time on the things that do not matter, because the list of things that actually matter is very short: love and work that means something, and the willingness to be present for other people's suffering without flinching away from it. That is the list. Everything else is decoration. Robert is there for all of it. He sits beside her bed in the evenings after Sean and Luca have gone to bed, and they exist together in the particular intimacy of two people who have loved each other through enough difficulty to have arrived at a version of love that requires no performance and no maintenance. He talks to her when she is awake and sits quietly when she is not. He tells her in these evenings things that he has been telling her for 8 years, that she made his life meaningful, that her love was the best thing that happened to him, that he is grateful for every day of it and will not stop being grateful after she is gone. She tells him not to be sad for too long. He tells her he cannot promise that. Christmas Day arrives the way it always does in the Swiss Valley, quietly, with a particular quality of winter light on snow that transforms the familiar landscape into something that looks briefly like a painting of itself. Audrey is very weak on Christmas morning. The decline of the past 3 weeks has been visible and steady, and the woman in the hospital bed in the living room is physically a long way from the woman who walked off the plane in Mogadishu 3 months earlier and walked into the camps without slowing down. But she is conscious. She is present. Her eyes, when she opens them and finds her family around her, carry the specific brightness of someone who has decided that this day is worth every unit of remaining energy. Small gifts are exchanged. She has prepared letters for each of them, written in the weeks when she could still sit up easily, sealed, handed over now with the simplicity of someone giving a gift that she knows will be opened and reopened for the rest of the recipient's life. Sean reads his and cries without trying to stop. Luca holds his against his chest for a long time before he opens it. Robert does not open his until later, alone. They play music in the afternoon. Moon River, the song that Henry Mancini and Johnny Mercer wrote for her voice specifically for the fire escape scene in a film made 30 years ago, a song that has followed her through every subsequent decade of her life as a kind of involuntary theme. She hears it from the bed, and something moves across her face that is not sadness exactly, but is the particular emotion of a person encountering the central melody of their own life and recognizing it as such. She spends most of Christmas afternoon drifting, the medication managing the pain at the cost of consciousness, the body asserting its own priorities over the wishes of the person inside it. But periodically she surfaces, and each time she surfaces she finds someone beside her, holding her hand, and she presses back. The days after Christmas move at their own pace. Her periods of consciousness become shorter and less frequent. The pain medication is increased as the pain requires. Sean and Luca take turns sitting with her, never leaving her alone, filling the hours with the quiet presence that is all anyone can offer in the final proximity to death. The simple fact of being there, of bearing witness, of ensuring that the person leaving does not leave alone. Robert never leaves the room. He talks to her through the days when she cannot respond, tells her about the garden, which is waiting for her, which will bloom again in spring as it always has, tells her she has done enough, tells her she has saved enough people and loved enough people and given enough of herself to the world that the world owes her the peace she is moving toward, tells her it is all right to go, that he will be fine, that the boys will be fine, that she has left them everything they need. The new year comes and goes while she sleeps. January settles over the valley. The mountains outside the window are the same mountains they have always been. On the morning of January 19th, 1993, the family gathers. The breathing has changed, become slower, more deliberate, the body making its final negotiation with the air it has been processing for 63 years. Sean and Luca hold her hands. Robert sits as close as the bed allows. The room is quiet. The garden is visible through the window, bare and waiting for spring. At some point in the early afternoon, the breathing stops. Audrey Hepburn dies at home, in her own bed, in view of her garden, surrounded by the people she loved most. She is 63 years old. She is at peace. The silence that follows is the kind that a room does not recover from quickly, the silence of a presence that has ended, the absence that is at first indistinguishable from presence and then slowly, unmistakably itself. Robert holds her hand, the boys hold each other. Outside, the mountains are white and permanent and the valley is very still. The world learns on January 20th. The news moves through every wire service simultaneously, lands on every front page that has a front page worth landing on, travels across every network that has been tracking her decline since the surgery was announced in November. Audrey Hepburn is dead at 63. The tributes arrive within hours from governments, from humanitarian organizations, from the film industry that shaped her and the fashion industry she shaped, and the UNICEF colleagues who watched her walk into Somalia in September and understood they were watching something that would not happen again. UNICEF's statement says she was an angel. This is not the language of press releases, and it is the language of people who watched her hold dying children in the worst places on earth and understood that what they were witnessing had no more adequate description. Gregory Peck, who had known her since Roman Holiday, says that God now has the most beautiful new angel. Billy Wilder, who directed her in Sabrina and watched her become the thing she was meant to be in front of his camera, says she was an angel on earth. The word keeps arriving from different mouths in different languages with the consistency of something that has been independently arrived at rather than coordinated. She is buried on January 24th in the churchyard of the village church in Toloshenaz. The ceremony is private, family, close friends, no media, no Hollywood spectacle. Simple and dignified, exactly as she asked. The village that gave her peace for the last decades of her life gives her this final thing, the right to leave it quietly. What she leaves behind requires no enumeration. The films are permanent. Roman Holiday and Sabrina and Breakfast at Tiffany's and The Nun's Story and Wait Until Dark and the others. A body of work that will be watched and studied and felt as long as there are people who understand that cinema is capable of capturing something true about what it is to be a human being. The fashion legacy is permanent. The little black dress, the clean lines, the Givenchy partnership, the Audrey effect that reshaped what women aspire to look like for decades. The Oscar is permanent. But what she leaves that has no equivalent in any other life she might have lived is this: millions of children who are alive because she went to the places where they were dying and made the world pay attention. Millions of people who received food and medicine and vaccines and clean water because a woman in a black dress at a Tiffany's window had built a face famous enough to attach to a humanitarian crisis and make it impossible to ignore. She was a war child. She was nearly a victim of history. Instead, she survived it. And then she used every gift and every accident and every carefully maintained inch of the public image she had spent 30 years constructing to pay back the debt she had owed since 1945, when strangers brought food to Arnhem and kept her alive. The circle was closed. The debt was paid. The war child went home. This is Legends of America.